New leaked membership figures show that Reform UK has now surpassed the Labour Party to become the largest political party in the United Kingdom. Now, that's according to The Times, and it marks the first time in 15 years a party other than Labour has claimed that top spot. Now, the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, has celebrated the news in these past few moments by saying the age of two-party politics is dead. Well, I'm joined in the studio by our political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, welcome to the studio. It's a pleasure to have your company as ever. The last few weeks have been typified by huge amounts of personal attacks on Nigel Farage, delving back 5 decades or more, short of saying he stole something from the tuck shop when he was 4. They've thrown the kitchen sink at him. It doesn't seem to have worked. There's been a few significant things happen overnight. The membership story, a crucial by-election in Scotland, and a few other by-elections. There seems to be that word, momentum. And I don't mean the Jeremy Corbyn variety, but let's start with the membership numbers. Talk through the numbers.
The numbers are impressive if you believe the Times newspaper. The Times newspaper says that the Labour has fallen below 250,000 paid-up members, they claim. This is the leak that the Times claim they've got. That means Reform UK, which claims over 268,000 on its live counter on its website, is now ahead of Labour and therefore the biggest party in the country. Nigel Farage says, as we have suspected for some time, Reform is now the biggest party in British politics. A huge milestone for us. And it is that, by the way, because bear in mind, he wasn't even leader until May last year. The age of two-party politics, he says, is dead. But again, just a reported figure. Labour say this, and this is crucial, Martin. Our membership figures are published in our annual report, out every February or so, I think, from memory, or certainly next year. We do not give a running commentary on them throughout the year. Off the record, they're not guiding away either way on this because they don't want to intend to move away from where they always sit, which is once-a-year publication. It's up to Reform how they choose to report their own, we're told by sources, but they've been consistent in that approach. It does show, doesn't it, that the attacks on Reform don't work. And I've been thinking recently about the attacks on Nigel Farage. You mentioned 50 years ago. There were 20 witnesses saying that Nigel Farage bullied them or they saw him bully them. Nigel Farage says it didn't happen. He attacked the people who did it. And it just seems to me it's washing over the public. I'm not sure it's actually impacting on voters in that sense. And I wonder whether they see it for what it is, which is appalling time at school for people. Maybe Farage was involved. He says not. They say he was. But in a sense, by going after him with the history, they're not tackling Farage where he is now. On policy, on the economy, on foreign affairs. That's how you deal with Farage as a politician. I think going back into the past is missing the target on trying to hurt him in the polls.
And I wonder if actually people are so used to this kind of personal attack now with 2 presidential election cycles in America, everything they can possibly do to sink Donald Trump, that didn't work. Or the public seeing this potentially for what it is, a cynical personal attack. Let's now move to north of the border, an area where historically, it has to be said, Nigel Farage has struggled to get a toehold, but there was significant by-election overnight, the first victory for Reform UK. Tell us about it.
I mean, you say struggled, even didn't bother going. I'm not sure he went to Scotland at all last year in the general election. I think he may not have gone at all, but I might be corrected on that. This is big news for them. They've won the Whitburn and Blackburn ward in this Scottish Council by-election. Dave McClellan, their candidate, won with over 1,100 votes. SNP second, Labour third. We're told by the party this is a clear signal from local residents that they want their community to take a new positive direction. It's a vote of faith in Reform in Scotland. We have all of the momentum in Scottish politics. Now, that's a big word, momentum. It's not necessarily a word claimed by Labour or Jeremy Corbyn. It means momentum is what you need in politics going forward, taking your enemies and move them to one side and winning. Look at the Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse by-election last June. I was there for it. Labour won over 8,500 votes. The SNP second with just under 8,000, but Reform 7,000 votes, up from 65 in the previous time it was held. That says to me the attacks on Nigel Farage, the racist attacks, the attacks on him as a person, what he believes in migration, they're not working, Martin. And I think who's suffering? The Tories are suffering and Reform are benefiting. The question now is what this means for next year's May elections in Scotland.
Your personal data could be exposed right now without you even knowing it. And if you want it removed, use incogni.com/GB News in the description now and get 60% off an annual plan on us. Incogni reach out to the data brokers on your behalf and request that your information be deleted from their databases. And they'll keep sending removal requests to make sure your data stays gone. Sometimes your information ends up on strange, obscure websites that automated tools just can't reach. And that's why Incogni just launched their unlimited plan with a feature called custom removals. With this, you can submit any link where your personal information appears, literally paste in the URL, and their privacy team will investigate and work to get it removed. And getting started is super easy. Hit the link in the description, create an Incogni account, and tell them whose data you want removed. Grant them permission to work on your behalf, and then all you've got to do is sit back and relax. They'll keep you updated along the way. Incogni is totally risk-free for 30 days. If you try it, it's not for you, you'll get a full refund. So take back control of your personal data today with Incogni. Use our code GBNews at checkout via the link in the description, and you'll get 60% off an annual plan.
More new polling today shows that the Labour Party have slumped to just 14% in a poll from the guys at Find Out Now. And that's a poll that will see the entire cabinet, including the Prime Minister, lose their seats. Well, let's get my guest in now, and that's the head of research at Find Out Now, Tyrone Sermon. Tyrone, always a pleasure to have your company. Well, it's Friday again, and another one of your polls is out, and it's cataclysmic news, seemingly, for the Labour Party, down to just 14%. Talk us through some terrible numbers for Sir Keir Starmer.
Sure. I mean, so it's definitely a cataclysmic poll, but in some ways it's not a shock one because our poll last week showed Labour still on 14% and still with all cabinet members losing their seats. I think my main takeaway is that maybe because there's so many polls or so we're used to bad news that we've almost become used to the governing party who won an enormous majority last year being in fourth place. But this is deeply, deeply unusual, and I just think it hasn't quite sunk in.
Tyrone, I've done what I always do when you come on, and I've ran your numbers through the electoral calculus machine to look at how the country would look on the base of this poll. Let's get it up on your screens now, and we can see there Reform UK leaping into first position on 30% of the vote, 341 seats. That's 336, up an incredible swing. Conservatives down to 70 seats. That's a loss of 51. The Greens surging into third position, people on fourth position on 61 plus 57. Carnage for the Labour Party, down to 32 seats. That's almost extinction level, losing 380. Let's get now quickly, if we could, to the electoral map. This is how Britain would look if that were to precipitate. We can see a turquoise tidal wave there. The Conservatives they're doing OK, not getting totally wiped out. SNP getting nibbled away back in Scotland, though. And finally, I always do this, Tyrone, it is Friday, the fifth poll on the trot. Here we go. The entire Labour cabinet would be obliterated, all of them, for the first time in history, including Sir Keir Starmer losing his seat. And they're losing left, right and centre. That's 11 seats to Reform, 8 to the Greens, 2 to the Independents. Tyrone, it's only just one poll, but it's a pattern. We're seeing the same trend all the time now. Is there any way back for the Labour Party?
Yeah, I mean, I think people say this is just one poll, but it's worth remembering that we actually did a poll exactly 365 days ago today, so the 12th of December last year, where we had Labour in first place, and now they're in fourth place. Again, I think people might say this is just one poll. It's an outlier. Maybe some of these uncertain voters will come back to the Labour Party, but, even if some of them do, that's still probably 3/4 of Labour cabinet members losing their seats rather than all of them. But yeah, in terms of a way back, I think it's quite difficult. They're losing voters slightly to Reform. They're mainly losing them to their left, to the Greens, and also people who want to stay home. I think the hope in Labour is that, the economy will get better, public services will get better, and some of these people will come back. But that would be a very long road to even denying Reform majority, let alone get one for themselves.
And meanwhile, we've seen news out today that in terms of membership, Reform UK has overtaken the Labour Party. We're seeing a by-election victory in Scotland for Reform for the first time. Tyrone, you're a numbers man, you're a data man, you think like a 3D chess player. When you put all these things together, there's something happening, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, all of these indications are pointing in the same direction. That reform is very much ascendant, with kind of Greens in a kind of secondary position. But again, I feel like people, they see these and they think, oh, but it can't possibly be real. It can't possibly be true that the governing party's in fourth place. I imagine that we're probably going to have the same story for the next few months until May, when, we get confirmation either way or not. Are these polling numbers just polling numbers, or are they true and reflected on the ground? I think likely the latter, but I imagine we'll have to wait till there's elections to get everyone, all the more sceptical people, on board as well.
Well, Tyrone Sermon, thanks for joining us there. It's always a pleasure to have your company, Head of Research at Find Out Now. More car crash numbers for the Labour Party. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get back to some analysis in the studio now. Chris Hope, our political editor, put in an amazing shift this week. Chris, thank you for being here at 5 p.m. It's been a heck of a long week. But look, we've got politics in our veins. This is what gets out of bed in the morning, and it simply is relentless, the Labour Party. They can't find a good headline anywhere.
They're trying to. They can't connect. They've got a leader who can't connect with what ordinary people care about. The private Keir Starmer is a decent individual doing his best. He can't seem to connect at all with the British people. Look at social media. It's a war zone out there for Labour at the moment. Reform are doing well, though. They won their first seat in the Scotland by-election last night. That is unusual. It's building on this momentum we saw in the Hamilton, Larkhall and Stonehouse by-election earlier this year. They won 7,000 votes from around 50 last time round. It is increasingly looking promising for Reform UK, and what they're doing well at now, it appears that the ground game is upping. If you look at these figures here that were released by Reform today, they say now they are the biggest party in the country, bigger than the Labour Party, because the Times says Labour's fallen below 250,000 paid-up members, suggesting they've lost one every 7 minutes since winning office in Labour in July last year. That means, according to Reform UK's live counter, they are the biggest party in the country. Nigel Farage has said this, just that is a huge milestone for us. The age of two-party politics is dead. Now, the Labour Party won't comment on that. They say that they won't offer a running commentary on their membership figures. They also say their figures are out when the annual report drops, so we'll wait and see how that ends up. But there's clearly a feeling here that momentum is behind Reform UK. Can they turn that into seats? I keep saying to you, Martin, there are more MPs called Josh than there are Reform UK MPs in Parliament. So right now, it's a bubble blowing up in the polls, in the wider country, and we're seeing evidence of electoral success in council by-elections and, of course, in the council elections earlier this year.
Chris, it's no joshing matter when you look at the direction of travel for the Labour Party. Is it the Starmer effect? Losing 60,000 members since February. It's not yet Christmas. And we've seen things like digital ID, something I know you've spoken about this week with great passion. Is attaching Sir Keir Starmer his name to an individual policy, is it become political kryptonite?
As people say unfairly, I think there's a reverse Midas touch around Starmer, in the sense that the King Midas turned everything to gold and Keir Starmer turns everything else the other way from gold. I think that's
a word we can't mention.
A word we can't mention. That's a bit harsh on Keir Starmer. He's doing his best. I think any politician, any party that won power in the back end of this decade would have to meet the challenge of where we find £500 billion spent in 3 years on the COVID pandemic and response to the energy shock caused by the war in Ukraine. That is where we are, I think, as a government. The problem is they boxed themselves in last July. They said we can't increase the three big taxes, national insurance, income tax, VAT. Because of that, they're scratching around for money and everyone's complaining.